And welcome back to another GDevelop video. This is part 2, and we're going to go ahead and get into some programming. First things first, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I changed the size of my game window. I did this in the last video. So what you want to do is you want to come up here to the top left, click on the project manager, and that brings up these settings where we made our first scene. And you want to go up here to game settings, and then properties. And then down here where it says resolution and rendering, yours might say 800 by 600, and that's for the width and the height. And that's what it is to start. And so I just changed mine to 1920 by 1080, and then click on apply, and it gives you a much bigger scene here. Okay. And of course you can go ahead and change those numbers and make your level even larger. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to change this background. So if you right mouse click in an open spot, you can then go here to scene properties, left click, and very simply right here, scene background color, click to choose, and I'll go ahead and just choose a blue for now. Try something like that. And then there's no OK button. You just sort of click over here and then click on OK, and there you go. Remember to file save every once in a while. Okay. Next, let's talk a little bit about level design, and then we'll get to the programming. So when you are bringing out your wall object, you can just bring it out and place it wherever you want. So I can just drag and drop it out. And I'm seeing that my wall object is really small. So I'll come over here and I'll double click it. And I can see that it's still set to 32 by 32 pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and double that. So 64, and apply. Okay, so that's a little more visible. So now what I can do is I can click and drag, and I can make horizontal and I can make vertical pieces. So I can start building my maze walls. What would be really helpful is if instead of just dragging them in here freehand, is if I had a tool. So GDevelop has a grid system. So what you do is you come up here to the top right, click on the little grid, and you do show grid. And the grid becomes visible. But what you want is you want the grid spaces to be the same size as your sprite tiles. So come back up here and choose Setup Grid, and you'll see that our grid is 32 by 32, which is a good default. But we want it to be 64 by 64. Now, obviously, if your tiles are 32 by 32, make sure that they're set up properly. Okay, so now as I move it around, you'll see that it snaps into place. And I can resize this, and it'll snap into place, and it just makes life so much easier. There we go. So level design becomes faster, and there you go. And of course, when you press play on your game, you do not see the grid. It's just there for helping you. It looks like I need to fix that little top there. It's always a good idea to turn on the grid before you bring the pieces in. If not, just snap all the edges and you're good to go. Okay, so now I've got some pieces here. All right, let's get on to the last part of the tutorial, the code. Okay, so coding, programming, scripting, whatever you want to call it. Oftentimes it's called logic. I like logic. It's done right here in this second tab. So whatever your scene is called, mine is called maze, you're automatically then going to get another tab here that has the word events in it. So if you click on the tab, you'll see that there are no events here. And you might see right here where it says add a new event. So an event is, of course, something that happens. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And now you get two sections. You get add a condition and add action. So the condition is what, of course, has to happen to trigger the action. So for my students, if the class is getting ready to end and the bell rings, the bell is the condition, and then the action is the students getting up and leaving the classroom. All right, so what I'm going to do is I want when the person, the human, presses a key on the keyboard, I want the player to move across the screen. So I'm going to go here to add a condition, and you have two different categories. You have objects and you have other conditions, and there's a lot here in GDevelop. So if you go here to objects, you can click on an object like the player, and then you can look through here and try to figure out what category you want. So that's really good for learning. Another great thing for helping you learn is that there's a search. So right up here in the search, you can just go ahead and guess, and that's really great for first-time learners here. So I'm going to click up here under search, and I'm going to type in keyboard, or actually key, and when you type in key, then you can go ahead and you can start looking here and doing a best guess. Now, if you don't do the search, you could have gone over here to other conditions, and under other conditions, you could scroll over here and look for the category, and here's the keyboard category. So you could click on the keyboard category and you could find those same things here, but the search is really good. So what I want is I want key pressed, not any key pressed, but I want a specific key pressed. The difference between key pressed and key released is the key pressed, of course, is when the key is pressed down, and key release is when the key is lifted up or let go. So I'm going to click on key pressed, and then over here it wants to know what key is it that you want. So our movement is going to be up, down, left, and right. So my recommendation to students is that they either use the keys W, A, S, and D, okay, so W would be up, or they use the arrow keys. So we're going to move our character to the right. And so it's either going to be the letter D, okay, and you can see that it found it right here, okay, or how do you do the right arrow key? Well, it's actually right. You actually type in right. You don't need the word arrow. And you'll see that what it found is it found it right here. It does have to be a capital R. So you just click on it right here, and then there you go, okay? So that's going to use the right arrow key. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. So now we have our condition. When the right arrow key is pressed, now we're going to add an action. And so now what we want to do is we want to affect the player. So we're going to click on player. And if you'll see right here, we have a category called movement using forces. And so what we want is we're going to do add a force. Actually, let me take that back. We're going to do this one here, add a force to move toward a position, okay? Because we want to make sure we're going towards a specific position. So we're going to go ahead and add that there. And then over here, we have to tell it where do we want to move towards on the X and the Y position, and then how fast do we want it to move. So we want this to move in the X position, which is horizontal, left and right. And then we have to decide, do we want it to move in the positive X position or the negative X position, okay? So we want it to move to the right, which is the positive X position. So we're going to go ahead and just try typing in a number here. Let's just try typing in 10, okay? Now, we don't want it to move on the Y. The Y-axis is up and down. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 0, okay, because I don't want any movement on the Y. And then for speed, again, we're guessing here. So let's try typing in a value of 10. Okay, so that's 10 pixels per second. And I think that's going to be too low, but let's just test it. So let's say OK. And again, you can see right here, when the right key is pressed, move the player towards 10 on the x-axis, 0 in the y-axis, with an instant force of 10 pixels. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save, and then I'll click on play. Okay, so there's my character. I press the right arrow key. Okay, so not only is the character moving too little, but it's moving in the wrong direction. So what you may have also noticed is that it was moving diagonally, and that's because the action I chose is it's moving on two axes at a time. It's moving on the x-axis and the y-axis. So I think I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So what you can do is you can click on the action. You can see it's highlighted here. You can also click on the condition. It's highlighted. So I'm going to click on this action here, and then I'm going to go ahead and press the delete key on my keyboard, and that will delete it. You can also delete it by simply selecting it. You can then right mouse click on it and then choose delete. So I'm going to add a different action, and I'm going to go back here to player, and I'm going to go back with my original idea of just adding a force. Okay, and you'll see here the difference between this one is that this one, it's just moving on one axis. And so you can see right here it says speed on x-axis and then speed on y-axis. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to say speed on the x-axis. I'm going to go ahead and put in a bigger number. I'm going to put in 100 pixels. Okay, and for the speed in the y-axis, I'm going to put in 0. Press OK. Okay, so it's going to add to the player an instant force of 100 pixels on the x-axis and 0 pixels on the y-axis. And I'm going to change the number. And so when you want to change the number or the value, you can just click right on it and you can change your number. And remember, when I did a positive number, it was moving to the left. So I think I need to do a negative number, and then it will move to the right. So now when I press play, and I press my right arrow key, oh, there we go. So it's moving much better, but wrong direction. So I need to be positive, and there we go. We should be all set. So now when I press the right arrow key, you can see that the character moves. Okay, and it's still moving a little slow, so maybe I'll settle on 200. Okay, so this is why you play test a lot. There we go. That's a little bit nicer. Okay, so that's it for movement. You basically now want to add in other conditions, or sorry, other events, and then other conditions. So I'm going to go ahead and pause, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how I did a couple of the other events. Okay, so to do it another direction, let's go ahead and let's do left, and then we'll do up. You could go ahead and click on add a new event, and then you could go back and you could recreate this one up here. Click on add condition, do add action, and all that good stuff. But instead, we can just copy and paste. So I'm going to click over here on the left-hand side, and I'm going to click on the bar, and it's going to select the entire event. You see this blue going around? So that's selected there. And then if I right mouse click on it, there we go. You got to get it in the right spot, right mouse click, and then I can choose copy. Okay, but you have to have the whole event selected. See how it's selected here? If you select just the condition, you're only going to copy the condition, which you can do, but it's a little slower. So you want to click down here and select the whole thing. Then you come down here to your new event. There we go. If you click in an open area, that's very helpful. So I now select this new event here. I right mouse click and then I choose paste, and you'll see that it copies and pastes everything. So now I can just change it. So I'll click on the word right and I'll go ahead and this will be left. Then all I need to do is change the force. Instead of positive 200, it's going to be negative 200. And that should have my character now moving to the left. So here's to the right, here's to the left, and there we go. So real easy. Okay. I'm going to add a new event. I'm going to click over here, right mouse click, paste, change this to the up arrow, and you can see right there, there it is, up, not page up. So when up is pressed, I want the player, now this time we want it to be 0 on the x-axis, and we want on the y-axis. Now you would think that if you're going up, you'd want it to be a positive value, but as you can tell by what I'm saying, it's the exact opposite. Okay, so to go up, that's actually negative, and there we are. Okay, that is it. There's up. So now all you need to do is copy and paste, and you can go ahead and make the down direction. I hope this video helps all of you out if you're just getting started, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much, everyone.